Hello everyone and welcome to OpenAGI Forum at Ghost in Paris 2026. I'm a host, Eric Wong from CSTN. So this is a conversation series where we speak with our brilliant Ghost in speakers. And the goal of this conversation is not just to talk about what is new, but to better understand which old assumptions are starting to break, which new questions are becoming unavoidable, and how technical process is beginning to reshape the way we build and evaluate and use intelligent systems. So today I'm happy to speak with Nico Matsakis. So many people know Nico is especially so through his work on the Rust. And that makes him a particularly good person to talk at a moment when some of the biggest questions in software are no longer only about syntax, semantics, or model capabilities, but about reliability, interfaces, responsibilities, and who gets to shape the next layer of infra. So, Nico, please say hello to our audience and take a brief introduction of yourself.
Okay. Hello, Eric. Yeah, so my name is Nico Matsakis. I'm right now the co-lead of the Rust language design team, but I've been working on Rust since 2011, which I think makes me the longest surviving member of the open source team. There are many other great people who worked on Rust and contributed. Most of them have gone off to do other things. I'm still here plugging away and still very interested in all the stuff that's going on there. But around 2021, I moved from Mozilla to Amazon, where I'm a senior principal engineer, and I work on our internal programming language strategy, but also just supporting the many teams at Amazon that are using Rust, which gives me a really interesting sort of inside view on building network services with Rust, but not just network, also embedded devices, robotics. There's a whole lot of areas that happen, so I find that a really interesting place to be as well.
I see. So over the past 20 years, many of the central questions in programming language have been about syntax, type systems, and performance. But the work in recent year seems to have moved much further outward into adoption, governance, and the execution layer. So do you feel the real center of gravity for programming language is beginning to shift?
That's a really interesting question. I feel like the reality is, I think if you wanted to get a new language launched, syntax was necessary, but not by any means sufficient, right? And you always had to think about the end-to-end experience. What does it mean to build in this language? What is the tools? Things like the package manager and the ecosystem around that. And in the case of Rust, I think a whole lot of what I've wound up being most involved in is sort of these sorts of questions. How can we teach it? What kind of working with others like Esteban Kuber and plenty of other people around in the compiler implementation on like the error message quality and how do people know how to fix the problems they're having. So in some sense, it's always been a whole product endeavor, I guess is what I'm saying. That said, there has been a big shift there has been and is ongoing a big shift in the way that people interact with development, right? And I'm of course referring to agentic development. But I feel like that is dramatically changing people's relationship to the code they're writing, for better and worse. And we're still sort of seeing it play out and find out exactly what impact that is going to have on development. I hear a lot of, to my mind, outlandish theories. I guess I may come to regret this statement, but for example, I hear people saying, well, code is cheap now, so we don't need libraries. We'll just, eventually the LLMs are just going to write binary gibberish to each other and like humans are not going to I don't believe that for a second, right? I think it's the opposite. Like code is cheap, and so fundamentals matter more than they ever did before, right? Because maintenance is not cheap. And I don't think it's getting cheaper, and so I feel like we still need frameworks. We still need abstractions. LLMs are it's like we wanted a smart computer, but we got a dumb human. And that's actually pretty useful, right? They can do a lot of stuff, but they still make the same kind of mistakes that humans make, so they need the same kind of tools that humans have built over the years, right, to build reliable systems. So I think that's wrong-headed. What we're going to see, though, is that there will be fewer libraries. I think frameworks, these kind of libraries that guide you to a successful, well-architected application, those are going to be as or more important than ever. Small libraries like the left pads of the world, sure, we can recreate those, but they were never that important, right? They were just like a way to save keystrokes. And in that case, I agree that they don't add a lot of value anymore. So that's one thing. But the other thing that I think is really happening, and I don't know what to think about it, is that you lose your personal sort of connection to the code that's being written, right? And I think that's going to have a lot of influence. I mean, one thing I've noticed, it will influence your choice of programming language. Like, if I'm writing the code by hand, I'm going to write it in Rust, right? It's the language I know best. It's what I'm most efficient in. If I'm asking an agent to write it, I'll pick the right language for the job, right? I'll say, I need a web browser thing. I'm not going to bother to write it in Rust and compile it through WebAssembly. Just write it in TypeScript. Like, come on. But at the same time, that goes in reverse too. Like, I'm building a service. Why should I build it in Node.js when I could build it in Rust just as easily and get more efficiency? So I think we're going to see a sort of, again, fundamentals are going to matter more. We're going to see an alignment around, I'm going to choose the tools based on what they offer for my task. And that's going to lead to a narrowing in some ways in the set of tools, but probably a lot of interesting research that is really focused on these fundamentals and the kind of difference they can make.
So talk about the handmade code and the different with the agentic code. So does language design today still mainly mean designing language, or has it also become a way of designing how software systems are organized? So would like Rust would change its design because of the agentic systems?
I think we're trying to figure that out. I have to say I went through a bit of a crisis of faith maybe 6 months to a year ago when I started getting into agentic development, and I was like, oh my God, is any of the skills I've built over the years still relevant, or is this all just, am I just a dinosaur? I decided, yes, I am a dinosaur, but that's okay. I still got to run with it, I still got to pass a few more years of productive engineering life. No, so I think there's no doubt it's going to have an impact. I don't know if I have two answers, I guess. I think in the short term, I don't think it's going to impact the language design that much. It's more about the tooling. It does sort of deprioritize certain kinds of improvements, but I think you could argue that some of the ergonomic work, small-scale ergonomic work is less important, but actually, like I said, agents make a lot of the same mistakes. I think a lot of the stuff that we most need in Rust to improve ergonomics are actually not saving keystrokes. They're letting you, their capabilities, the absence of which forces you into awkward workarounds. And that's just as helpful for agents as humans. And so I expect to see that work continue. What I also think, there's a new space opening up that lives somewhere between Markdown and programming language.
Oh, yeah.
Something like UML, like these modeling languages of the past that never quite caught on. I think there's a space for that opening up, and we might see something. I'm kind of interested in this, but if I knew how to do it, I'd go do it now. But where what you'd have is you'd have the agent authoring. You'll put your intent in the form of Markdown, right? And that's a very ambiguous thing. And then the agent will. Right now, what happens is the agent goes from this to code, which is a big jump, right? It goes from like high-level idea to very low-level precise specification. And that leaves a lot of room for ambiguity and mistakes, and the structure of the code is often not that good, like it's very repetitive. And so then you get into this hand review, which is very tedious. And I think there's my experience over time has been when errors come in translation is because the gap is too big. Right? We see this in like compilers. You need a new intermediate representation to make that translation more obvious. So I think we need something where the agent says, I took your idea and I made an executable thing. It's not efficiently executable. Maybe it's not even deterministically executable. Like it's still got a lot of squishy things. Maybe the body of the function is just a big comment. But like, it's enough that if I look at it, it's sort of what I would write on the whiteboard when I'm working with somebody trying to convey how I think they should write the program. The high level idea, and I can review that, and that's much shorter, and say no, that's not right. That's close, but actually, I think you should take these two functions. They're kind of doing the same thing. Can we make one function? Or let's separate this and have two modules and a thread over here and an actor model. I don't know. That's the level at which I want to be communicating, such that it's like I can imagine what the code is going to be, but I don't actually have to write it or read it. And I think if you had that, then you could go from that to the code. And it's still a non-deterministic, ambiguous process. It would have required a skilled developer in the past, but now we have one that we can rent by the hour. Basically, I think at that point I might not even need to read the code unless something really goes wrong. Right?
Yeah, I see. So a lot of outside discussion about Rust to reduce its difficulty to things like the borrow checker or I think PAM. So looking back from where you sit today, what has actually been the deeper bottleneck in Rust adoption?
Oh, first I'll answer an easy one, which is like, what do I think would probably be the single biggest unblocker for us? And I think the answer is C++. Painless C++ interop is really showing up a lot. And it's something we haven't, frankly, paid much attention to. I think that's partly because it actually was not the right thing to do earlier. It became the right thing to do now. And the reason is you have to think about the adoption curve, right? Earlier, we were targeting the sort of early adopters of Rust. And frankly, one of the things we learned along the way is those were not C++ developers. The existing C++ developers, their needs were met. They were using C++. They could do what they wanted to do. Maybe it took them longer, but it wasn't a core blocker for them. Instead, we were targeting the people who wish they could use C and C++, but couldn't for one reason or another, right? But now we're starting to get to the point where actually we're past that stage. People who are using C++ are willing to use Rust, but they need to deal with their big code bases, and they need interop to make that a gradual process. So that would be a huge unblocker. If I could go back in time, I think I would have paid more attention. It's not that we didn't pay attention to ergonomics. It's like all we thought about. Yeah. But I still think we could have been. There was periods where I thought it was good enough, and I think we could have been more aggressive at really pushing the mental model and really recognizing. Like, it took us way too long to get rid of all our sigils. It took us way too long to do non-lexical lifetimes. And I wish we'd done those faster.
Yeah, so for you, where's the real line between improving the experience and starting to dilute the language? Because Rust clearly still needs to keep improving the ergonomics.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. So you have never been very interested in hiding system complexity just to make things feel easier on the surface. But at the same time, Rust still needs to keep improving the ergonomics.
Yeah.
So for you, where's the real line between improving the experience and starting to dilute the language?
That's a fascinating question, right? There's sort of this, I think that's been the tension around which Rust has rotated for quite some time. And my position has certainly changed. Like Rust's position has changed. When I first started working on Rust, it was much more close to Go or Swift than it is now in terms of it had like a mandatory runtime and a built-in threading model and stuff like that. And I think it's taken us a while to realize, and taken me a while also, like just personally, I've kind of come around to this saying that I keep coming back to that's sort of never led me astray, which is low level enough for a kernel, usable enough for a GUI, right? And that's that. The key word there is enough, usable enough. Because sometimes I get attracted and I think, we could make it just as nice as Swift. We could make it just as clean as Go in these cases. And we could. But in so doing, we would often lose some explicitness that maybe you could opt back in, maybe you can recover it. But I think it wouldn't be Rust anymore. And it's tough to find where that line is, but I think we're starting to get a sense for it better and better over time, where it's like you might have to say something that you wish you didn't have to say, but at least we can make it easy to say, right? Mm-hmm. There's no excuse for making it verbose and painful. Maybe you have to write box where you wish you didn't have to, but all you have to write is box, and I think it's when we fail that, when it's like, actually, not only do you have to say something, but it's kind of non-obvious what you have to say. or it's long and wordy or whatever, that's when people really bounce off, right? As long as we can make it simple, I think people are okay with that because they see the benefit of, hey, maybe I don't care right now, but in other parts of my code I do care.
See. So switch to a personal angle. You now sit in a rather unusual position as a languager, a designer, a governance figure, and someone helping push Rust inside a big company like AWS. So once Rust is shaped not only by a technical community, but also by major companies and Inver users, so who really gets to set the priorities?
Oh yeah, interesting question. I would say I don't quite agree with your framing.
Yeah.
In that I think Rust has always been sort of guided by not necessarily by big companies, but by companies trying to put it to use. And I think my take on open source, this is also something that's evolved. I came in as a grad student. I was very idealistic. I remember I turned down another job opportunity for the chance to work at Mozilla because it was open source. And I remember the person I turned it down saying, like, you better explain why you turned down this offer, and it better be more than just like hippie stuff about open source. And I was like, well, Rust is cool. I want to work on Rust. Anyway, the side story. But what I think about open source now, I think about actually the magic really comes from people, the overlap between users and developers, and the chance for people to come and unashamedly pursue their own goals. The chance for a company like Amazon to come and say, we like Rust, it would work better for us if it was like this, right? Which I think sometimes gets cast in a negative light. I think people sometimes say that's like Amazon or whatever, pick your big company. That's dollar big company, like trying to turn Rust into their language. And I think, well, that can happen. That's a failure mode. But when it's working well, that's a customer telling you what they need, and you're a fool if you don't listen, right? And so what I kind of prefer, and something Yehuda Katz told me, he's sort of an early mentor, if you will, on how to navigate open source. And I really like this saying he said, which was like, the answer is always more community. It's like, if the problem is that some big company is coming in and narrowly driving some aspect of Rust to meet their needs in a way that is too narrow, then the solution is not to tell them to stop caring about their needs. It's to bring in more stakeholders, right? So that now they're driving it in conjunction. Like if it's Amazon and we were adding some Lambda, keyword, not that we ever would do this, but some keyword to Rust that made it work really well with Lambda, but it won't work with Google Cloud or Azure. Like the solution is probably bring in Google Cloud and Azure so that now we all have to agree on a design, and we know it's going to work for everybody. And so that's sort of the way I think about it. Is like, the problem is not a company having needs and driving with their use cases. The problem is when you just have too few representatives involved, and the answer is get more.
True. So the recent work on Symposium feels especially interesting because it doesn't treat AI as just another feature layer. It seems closer to rethinking how software deployment itself is organized. So why do you feel that the biggest problem in AI development today is not simply that the models are still not strong enough, but that the execution layer is still underbuilt?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two answers to this question. I think as a general principle, the way to move fastest and to build the best things is to build extensible systems. Because I think someone else is always smarter than you, and it's better you hear that, learn it sooner rather than trying to think you can do it better than the whole world. Somebody's going to have a better idea, and you might as well benefit from it. So build your system to be extensible, and then you both win. On the other side, so that's like a general principle, and I want to see us do more extensible AI. I think the AI systems we have today are not geared for that, and I think that's to their detriment. On the flip side, I also think they are using our toolchains. Our toolchains were built for humans. They work pretty well, but there's a lot of ways they could work better. And so what I think has worked really well for us in Rust, we've emphasized extensibility. I think actually, just leaving AI completely aside, I wish we went further, right? So we let crates define proc macros. That's awesome. They can essentially extend the language to build a DSL. But what they can't do is influence the error messages, at least not very much. We started to tiptoe in this area. We've dipped our toe in. Not tiptoe, mixed metaphors. Anyway, we've got a little bit of that kind of thing. I would like them to be able to go, anything that the Rust toolchain does, I think the crate authors should be able to do. Right now, Rust Analyzer suggests quick fixes in your IDE. I think Tokyo should be able to suggest a quick fix. Right now, Clippy is the only person who can issue lints. They're a special Rust project. I think every crate should be able to offer lints. It's tricky because we have to define these interfaces that give access to compiler internals and do other stuff. But I think, in general, I would like to see us go that way. And that extends, now the surface of where a user interacts with is not Cargo and Rust Analyzer, but also their agent. Right? Yeah. So by extension, I think a crate should be able to influence your agent. That's why Symposium lets crates supply skills, supply MCP servers. And so I think that's where we should go. I think there's a whole lot of interesting problems that are a little bit unique that we're going to have to tackle over time. Yeah. Purity comes to mind, although I don't think that's unique. But another one is just the models are constantly getting better. And so actually, it's a bit of a moving target, and I'm not sure how we're going to manage that. Like, what is really necessary to make Claude or GPT work well today is very different than what was necessary 6 months ago. The amount of hand-holding you had to do has changed. The kinds of mistakes they make are different. And I expect it's going to keep changing. So I think we have to make it extensible. I also think we're going to have to do new and interesting things to really tune that advice that we're giving, not only to what crates are using, but also to what agents are using. Yeah.
I see. So if AI development really moves from writing prompts to organizing executable systems, so do some of the things programming languages have spent decades developing, like types, modularity, dependency management, or interface boundaries, start to become nearly important again?
Yeah. Mike Hicks wrote an interesting, I think it was a blog post. He's a professor. I'm actually not sure where he is now. I think he's at U of Maryland. Maybe he moved. Anyway, he wrote an interesting blog post that I liked, that talked about, it distinguished between complexity, managing complexity in ways that are like, he called it like a law of nature, versus sort of incidental local complexity. And I think what we're seeing is that the laws of nature still apply. And so something like types, something like don't repeat yourself, this kind of guidance to me is like a law of nature. It's like, if in order to know how to change a piece of code, you have to know everything else about all the rest of the code, that's O(n) squared, right? And that's a law of nature. That's just abstraction, encapsulation, those things will always be relevant no matter what. On the other hand, and this kind of comes back to your question a little about language priorities, we spent a lot of time in Rust in the past shaving down like what I would count more like paper cuts, sometimes people thumb stubbing things like, do you have to write ampersand foo or ampersand star foo? Can we make them the same? Can we make it? Those kind of things are local in nature. And I do think we're going to see them become less important. I think we'll probably be able to say, hey, agents are being trained on these things. So even if a thing is a little bit persnickety, maybe it's better to just be more precise and let the agent handle it, because it doesn't find it so hard to be precise as humans do. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my take on that.
Got it. So let's talk about what is overestimated and underestimated. So right now the industry is full of fashion ideas, buzzwords like multi-agent systems, computer use, the code zero you mentioned the first, and the autonomous engineers or benchmark leaderboards. So which of these or other minds I haven't mentioned would you most want to look at more skeptical? And on the other side, what feels most underrated to you, but most likely to become part of the next layer of real infra?
Yeah, that's good. I actually don't even know what half of those things are. The new buzzwords come out so fast and furious, I can't keep up. I think so let me answer slightly different. What I'm most interested in that seems very trendy right now, but I think is a trend with something that's actually behind it, is maybe it's what multi-agent systems means. It's like genuinely autonomous development or at least another level of autonomous, past Claude Code, which is very human in the loop, to, I don't know, something like Gastown or whatever these things. I don't actually know anything about it. I mean, I do know about the details of Gastown. I'm not endorsing the details of that, but having many agents that are cooperating with each other, pursuing a goal that is sufficiently complicated that actually it takes a while to achieve it, right? I think that's still very early, but I think I see signs that can really be effective in certain cases. We have people doing things like, of course, there's Claude's, Anthropic's famous C compiler experiment, but I see also people doing things like building complex mocks of an AWS service for internal testing, right? Yeah. And this is something we've always wanted. It's something that was just impractical before, but it's actually possible, and people are having success. Just like, yeah, let the agent run for 2 days and just bang on this thing and build like a close enough a simulation of the input-output behavior, and then let it run locally. Like, you can actually do that. So I think there's stuff there. I don't know. It's too early. I suspect it's going to be the kind of thing where, first, if you want to be skeptical, you'll find plenty of evidence, because for a while it's going to still make stupid suggestions, kind of like LLMs were 2 years ago. Impressive demos, couldn't use it for real work. But I think, given the pace we're moving at, we're going to start seeing that stuff show up.
So once systems begins to execute rather than just generate content, so the question shifts from did you say the right thing to who gave you permission, or who is responsible for the consequences? So they think AI may end up reshaping not only how software is built, but also how the software will think about responsibility, control, and safety boundaries.
So, I don't know. I think it's kind of amazing that the software world has gotten by for so long without providing any warranty on what we build. Yeah. I'm constantly amazed that the rest of the world lets us get away with this. Not that I want them to change it, but I think the people doing, in some ways, the most interesting AI policy in this area has been the Linux project. I was really fascinated watching the way that they're approaching their AI usage rules and the emphasis they put on who takes legal responsibility for this code. Mm-hmm. I think we will continue to, I kind of think all this stuff about who's responsible is a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I just don't think it's that complicated. It's obvious who's responsible. The one who gave the instructions. You're responsible. You told the agent what to do. You have to vet the output. And if you can't vet it sufficiently well, then you probably should pick another way to do it. So in that, I guess maybe a different question is like how will we be effectively vetting when we're generating reams of code? Code review is more important, but code review has always been a kind of not very good solution to a whole lot of problems. And I think we're just seeing that it doesn't scale that well. It never did. Just the scale was low.
So human in the loop is still necessary.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, human on the hook is how I would put it. Human on the hook is necessary. You can't tell a computer, but that doesn't even have any meaning to me. But does the human feel comfortable shipping things that they built when they were not in the loop? That's up to you. That's a call you got to make. I mean, I install software that I have no idea what testing they did.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see. I'm really interested in sandboxes, in policies. It feels like we have never cracked that problem as an industry, but maybe now we'll have some renewed pressure. I would like to see agents moving towards sandbox by default. I would like to not have to figure out weird policy languages, though. I would like to be able to say, more like how credit card fraud detection works, but not as weird as that. But sort of looking for things that look suspicious and raising them to my attention versus making me say yes, no to every file read and write.
Yeah. So I've read the news today, people saying that all the people say the code zero, or the non-developer build an app, all of these people is from the companies that have many tokens like OpenAI and Anthropic.
True.
Yeah.
I am really looking forward. If I could wave a wand, I would probably say, let's just end subscription models. Let's make everybody pay per token. Partly because of carbon concerns and energy consumption. I see a lot of profligate use, and I don't particularly care for that. But because I do think that it's discouraging us from figuring out how to do things more efficiently. We've sort of adopted an attitude of scale up and up, make bigger models with more parameters, and use one big oracular model that knows how to answer any question, and then just throw questions at it, even simple ones. And I feel like I would like to see us doing more targeted models, local models, open source models. I think that would be really cool. I don't really buy Code Zero. I guess we'll see. I should say, I don't buy it, and also, if I'm building a web page these days, I don't read the code.
That's true.
I just tell it do it. It does a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't build anything really complicated also. So, so I guess I should say I don't buy it, and I can see it happening, and I guess it's going to keep growing and spreading. But it just feels like there'll always be a frontier where things are pretty complicated, and I think you need it.
So the last question is, if you pull all these threads back to a larger thing, it feels as if from early Rust to today's Asian ecosystem, you have been working on the same underlying questions, is how to give more power to more people without pretending the complexity isn't there. So does that feel like the same underlying theme to you today? And if so, what is the 2026 version?
Yeah, it does. I'm kind of honored that you framed it that way, but that is exactly how I would say it. Yeah, it's. I feel like the work I want to be doing is empowering people to build the systems they want to build. That's in reliable, efficient, foundational systems, making that easier and more accessible. But yeah, not by hiding it, but by letting you manage it, the complexity.
See.
And how is it different? I mean, we have the most powerful tool I've ever seen. We got to figure out how to use it. We're still, I feel like we're still, what's the right metaphor? I don't know what the right metaphor is, but we're still very early.
Yeah,
we're still messing around. We're throwing it at things it's totally inappropriate for. But it seems obvious to me that it's going to change the way we do stuff very deeply.
I see. So that's all the questions. Thank you again for your time. This really impressive conversation, and for bringing such a wide-ranging perspective into this conversation. And for our audience, if you enjoy these episodes, please keep following OpenAGI Forum at GoSim Foundation channel. So before we wrap up, could you also share how people can follow your work and stay in touch with what they are doing?
Sure. Well, you can always read my blog, but first of all, I would direct you to symposium.dev, symposium.dev. That's where I think it's going to be a focus for a lot of my personal work going forward. But also my blog at smallcultfollowing.com/babysteps. That's sort of been for the last 14 years where I just dump whatever it is I'm thinking about, and I plan to keep doing that. And I always appreciate hearing from people who've read those articles and want to tell me what they think about it. And I do get a lot of people sending me emails and so on. It usually helps me formulate things more and better.
So thanks again, Nico, and that's all the content. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.